Welcome to Conversations for Human Connection. My name is Claudia-Sam of Claudia-Sam Soul Coaching, and I support driven women who feel stuck with where they're at in life, but who wish to know themselves better, prioritize themselves, and take the leap fearlessly towards their purpose while creating a fulfilling life filled with joy using my tune-in method.
And we can learn how to make TikTok videos and to do things that help us get advanced degrees. You can Google the Black experience. For white women to ask me a question, I ask them, would you ask this same question of your white friends? As Black women, we always have to kind of fight and prove that what we're saying is what we're saying, and that our feelings do matter, especially when sometimes it's diminished. Colorblindness assumes that everyone has had the same experience. If you realize that you have a voice and your voice is listened to, use your voice to speak up. Our voices, no matter how loud we can be powerless at times, and it's very frustrating. People are fed up. We need to have these conversations so changes can be made.
Welcome to Conversations for Human Connections. My name is Claudia-Sam of Claudia-Sam Soul Coaching, and today I'm joined by Jessica of Stories and Films. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Claudia-Sam. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so excited that we get to talk, and one of the reasons I'm doing these Conversations for Human Connection is that part of what I do is help women really dig inside themselves, right? And understand who they are outside of the title of their job, outside of the role in their family, outside of their race, outside of the color of their skin, and really arrive deep into the level of their soul. And that's when we can start to have heart-to-heart conversations with ourselves, but also with other souls. And so this is why we're here, and I'm so excited. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me in these times of truth.
Thank you for having me.
So, Jessica, one of the things I wanted to ask you and talk about is, can you share with us any experience that you've lived as a Black woman that can shed light for white women to understand better acts of racism that might not even seem like they're actually racist?
Sure, I can totally do that. One thing that I think should be considered is that a lot of things that are considered racist or discriminatory may actually be unconscious biases that are along racial lines. So sometimes I do feel that some people are just not aware that the actions that they're doing will be considered racist. For example, if someone wants to touch my hair or ask me where I'm from, no, really, where are you from? When my answer is usually, I'm from New York City. It's kind of, there has to be a level of empathy, because if for white women to ask me a question, I ask them, would you ask this same question of your white friends? And if the answer is no, then possibly the question that you're asking is discriminatory.
That's such a good point. And you're right. I was just watching a video. I don't know if you saw it. It was BBC News. Her name was Evie, and she was sharing a poem, or she said she called it a word vomit. I don't know if you saw that video, and she did like a little rap of, it was a beautiful poem. And one of the examples she gave was, yeah, can I touch your hair? How is it that we can help these kinds of comments not happen again, for example?
Yeah, for example, the one term that irks me a lot is when someone says, I don't see color, I only see people. Colorblindness assumes that everyone has had the same experience, and that essentially, especially here in the United States. And in doing that, it suppresses the narrative of oppression and racial discrimination of those of color, particularly those who are Black. And it also strips away of the uniqueness of a person of color. And not truly, it strips the uniqueness of those who are white. We inherently are going to see differences amongst fellow human beings, whether we see that we each have curly hair or someone has straight hair, or the color of their skin or the color of their hair or the features, their height, and that sort of thing. You know, if we're not blind, we're going to see similarities and differences. So to say that, oh, I don't see color, you know, it's kind of a racist term, because you're kind of diminishing, you know, other people, because sometimes you're kind of think, you know, in saying that, particularly me as a Black woman, I see is that, oh, I see you just like, I see you like how I am, but I'm not like you. I am different. You know, so that's, you know, that's one thing to say. You know, I always wonder, you know, like I have diverse friends. I come from, you know, I'm originally from New York City, and it's pretty diverse, but there's also a lot of different areas and sections within the boroughs where, you know, we kind of stick to our own, where there is a majority, you know, predominantly Black neighborhood, predominantly someone from the people from the Caribbean, that sort of thing.
Mm.
So I have a diverse set of friends, but you know, it's like, oh, I'm not racist. I have Black friends, and it's kind of like, well, would you say that? You know, I'm not racist. I have white friends. You know, so it's, you know, any act that discriminates is a discriminatory act at the end of the day, you know, no matter how basic. And even if it comes from a place where you're not being malicious, it may be taken as such, because, you know, as Black women, we always have to kind of fight and prove that what we're saying is what we're saying, that our feelings, you know, do matter, especially when sometimes it's diminished. You know, I can say I feel a particular way, but someone is like, why statistics that says otherwise? And it's like, really, numbers are value more than how I feel, you
I'd love
know?
to know more about that. Like you're saying that you're having to often prove what you feel and what you have to say. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, I can give a great example. I'm a mother, and my first child, I had the experience being delivering in a hospital, and you know, my first labor experience was not a good one, and you know, even just me saying, you know, I'm in pain, can you please look at me? You know, I'm sitting in the waiting area, literally bleeding, just hoping that somebody would look at me. And my son was born and then was taken to the NICU because of complications. And in the back of my mind, I always wonder, you know, could this have been a different situation if I was in a different hospital, or if I was a different person, and
Mm.
that sort of thing. So it affects, you know, different, you know, racial biases affect me, it affects my child, it affects our community. And I don't think people take the consideration of what one act can do to a whole community.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, Jessica. And it makes me wonder, you know, say right now we were in this situation in the hospital waiting area, and um, I was there next to you, and I was not in pain, but I could clearly see that you are in pain. The thing to do then would have been, hello, can someone help her? Like, would that have, is that the, is that an action that would have helped in that moment? Or
I
go ahead.
I think so. I think, you know, what I, as a Black woman, look for for white women to do is to be able to use their privilege to help us, you know. If you realize that you have a voice and your voice is listened to, use your voice to speak up. It's like bullying. If you see a bully, you know,
Mm.
there's two actions. You either step back, or you push forward and you confront and say, hey, this is wrong. I'm gonna tell you why this is wrong, and let's correct the situation. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Black women, Black people in general, are looking for that. You know, our voices, no matter how loud we can be powerless at times. And it's very frustrating, you know, especially when there are so many adjectives used to describe us, like, you know, the typical angry Black woman stereotype. And it's like, we have a reason to be angry. You know, we are oppressed, we're not listened to. And I mean, what kind of positive emotions would you want to associate with not being listened to, with being ignored? You know, so.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And this also came to my attention when I was listening to it's called Kinswomen podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it. And I forget the name of one of the hosts, but she was explaining a story about how she was trying to get she was white and her husband is Black, and she was trying to get him to speak up for himself and to, why are you accepting that kind of behavior? Why don't you speak up for yourself? And she realized that it's just not the same thing whether she as a white woman speaks up for herself and him as a Black man speaks up for himself, or a Black woman. Can you tell us a little bit more about that difference, please?
Sure. Absolutely. I think, like for instance, I grew up in a Black household. Both my parents are Black, and there's almost, almost a tone of, you don't discuss race, especially with those who are not Black, because if you do that, you make them uncomfortable, and it's not our place to make others uncomfortable. And that's why there's a shift nowadays, like with the current protests here in the States, people are fed up. We need to have these conversations so changes can be made. It's absurd that events that are occurring in 2020, happened in the 50s and the 60s, happened that in the 1920s, 100 years ago, happened in the turn of the century and even centuries before that. And it's like, enough is enough. We are in the 21st century. We are in developed countries. We know better. It's time for us to, at the very least, have a conversation. So when it's ingrained in you, even as a child, that you can't talk about your feelings, or if you say something, there are consequences to what you're saying. You learn as you get older not to do that.
Right. So if you speak up, there'll be consequences, and you don't want to make people uncomfortable. Let's talk about that, because I feel like many white women right now, if we're talking about women right now, don't know what to say, are afraid of saying the wrong thing, are afraid of being seen as racist, even if, they say they're not, even if they in their heart know they're not, that white lens is still there. So what would you say to someone who's like this, like, I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't want to be like, really, what would you say to someone who's willing to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, but doesn't know how?
What I would tell white women is that, let's say a Black woman says to a white woman, "You're racist," and you're taken aback, like, oh my gosh, this person just said that. Give that woman some time to explain it. And if that woman isn't ready to explain it to you, ask another Black woman or another Black person and let them explain. Well, describe the situation to them, and then let them ponder on it, and they'll give you their opinion and why it could be taken as such a way. My point is, don't just stop. If the person is angry, maybe they need to kind of calm down and what have you. Maybe they're not ready to tell you at that moment. That doesn't mean the conversation stops right there. What I would say to white women is to be able to educate yourself about the Black experience. And it's in the age of Google, and we can learn how to make TikTok videos and to do things that help us get advanced degrees. You can Google the Black experience and books that's related to that. The easiest way to educate yourself, I have to say, is to be empathetic. Put your loved one in that situation. If you feel that your loved one was in the same situation as, typical experience of a Black woman, and you would step up and remove the person from the situation or speak up, you can do that for your fellow Black sister. And that's kind of what we're asking for. So that's what I would say. The conversation can't stop. Even if it's uncomfortable, it may be uncomfortable at the beginning, but the more you talk about it, the more comfortable it will be. And, it's like with any relationship, whether it's a familial one or a romantic one, the more you communicate, the more the relationship blossoms. And sometimes people have walls built around them. So you just have to give it time to chip away at those walls.
Thank you so much. You're right. Give it time to chip away at those walls. And when is it too much inquiry and curiosity from a white person towards a Black person? Like, because we want to let's say there is this desire for showing empathy and compassion and really inquiring, but is it at some point just annoying?
It can be, because it's like from my perspective, you can really educate yourself to learn what the experience is. Another thing too, I think white people tend to, when they're asking questions, they tend to look at that Black individual to be the representative of all Black people. I do not know what it is to be born and raised in Nigeria. I don't know what it is to be a Black person in the Caribbean. I don't know what it is to be a Black person in Oklahoma. I can only speak of my experiences. You have to ask yourself, if you saw someone with red hair, would you automatically assume, hey, how is it to be from Ireland? So it's kind of, you have to, you can do it. You have to be willing to do it.
You're so right. Thanks so much. And Jessica, maybe to finish off, have you ever done really self-development work to access that layer of your soul that I was talking about at the beginning?
Absolutely. I do meditation. It would be disingenuous to say on a daily basis because it's more of like an hourly basis, at the times that we are in now. It's very stressful. Even with the racial climate here in the United States, I think people forget that we're actually in the middle of a pandemic on top of this, so it's very stressful, and everyone's lives are turned upside down, whether they are working from home and trying to manage home and family life, or they're unemployed and they don't know where the next check is coming from. The normal stresses are amplified. So I do take the time to kind of calm. I'm in a room right now inside my house, and I'm away from everybody, because it's very important for me to separate and, separate and just focus on what I need to focus on. And that helps centers me.
Yeah, totally. And that's when, right, when we slow down and we're able to center ourselves and de-stress from the chaos of everything that's happening outside of us, well, we realize that we're often, we're stuck in our head, we're being influenced by the external world, and we start to either be enraged of what's going on, especially, we can see the feed on Facebook and on social media, and we can really have that work us up, or we can all be human and connect at that level of, we all have hearts. We all have this need for navigating a pandemic because we've never lived it. Like, we have to, we haven't prepared for this all our lives. What I'm trying to say is, if we can connect to ourselves, we can then connect better with other humans, with other souls, and understand that everyone is living the same human life, with the same air, but with the different lens. And if we can better access that inner soul level, then we can maybe chip away at that lens and start, hopefully, to eradicate any racist acts, any racist thoughts, and start to see each other as the same, if hopefully that is a possibility at some point.
I do believe when people are being racist, and in this case I'm talking about someone who is obviously racist, and
like a hater.
Their goal is to hurt someone. They are projecting hurts amongst themselves. There is a way to be with other people without putting them down. And I think that's what racists do. There's a level of superiority, which is essentially what racism is. It is white superiority over other races. And without projecting the hurt or perceived hurt, I think that will help at chipping away racism. We all should be treated equally. But at the same time, before we can do that, we have to acknowledge that not all are treated the same way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful we had this conversation.
When you asked me to be a part of this, I don't want to say I was a little apprehensive, but I was wondering, am I the right person to do this? And I have young children, and when they get older, I want them to ask me, Mom, during the whole coronavirus pandemic of 2020 and all of the racial protests in the United States in 2020, what sort of history were you a part of? And this is even my little step in moving in the right direction. I may not say all the right things. I'm sure there are things I've said that Black women may not agree with, and that's fine, because like I said, I cannot speak for their experiences, and in certain ways I cannot speak for my experiences, but you and I having this conversation may be able to inspire someone to have their own conversation.
Yes, you're right. Let's hope so. Let's definitely hope so. And you said that you weren't sure if you were the right person to do this, and you're totally the right person to do this. So I hope you know that. Do you know that? Can you feel that you are the right person to step up for yourself, for your children, for other women on this planet, to empower and speak up? Do you feel it, or is there still a little bit of doubt?
I think we all have what is that, imposter syndrome every now and then, but the older I get, the more confident I am, so.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your life, your heart with us. I'm so grateful. And thanks so much for being here, Jessica.
Thank you, Claudia-Sam. I really appreciate it.